So guys, I hope you're enjoying my videos, and let me start out immediately by saying if you enjoy the videos in my video, please always remember to give it a thumbs up. It really helps me. It helps other people to see my videos as well. And don't forget, please subscribe to my channel so that you can see all these wonderful videos from the Philippines. And right now we're gonna watch a video from 1947. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy 1947 in the Philippines. The March of Time. Okay, so time is moving on. Well, it always moves, doesn't it? Never stops. Okay, the Philippine Republic.
Far across the Pacific, almost 7 miles from the United States, are the Philippines, a group of 7,091 islands which make up the new independent Philippine Republic.
7,090 islands only? Okay, I think we lost just about 600 islands here. But okay, who counts, right? They didn't have Google Maps during those times, did they? Well, but anyhow, that's funny because the Spaniards knew that there were more than 7,090 islands. Alright, let's go, guys.
Of all the countries invaded by the Axis powers in World War II, few were more complete. As peace came to their ruined cities and farms, the Filipinos, with the independence the U.S. had promised them only a year away, found they had little left with which to begin life as a nation.
Yeah, it must have been so hard. Wow, look at that. All ruins everywhere. Filipinos had looked forward to their Independence Day, July 4, 1946, as the achievement of a goal never lost sight of through more than 300 years under American and Spanish rule.
43 different racial groups, with no common culture or tradition, the Philippines became a Spanish possession following their discovery by Magellan in 1521.
Right.
Entirely dominated by their Spanish rulers, the Filipino people in 3 centuries made little economic or political progress.
Really? So it stayed more or less the same, huh? Oh, I always love videos that shows the Calabao or the water buffalo here like this, in this tranquil provincial setting where you got the house built on stilts, no? To protect from animals, of course, snakes and stuff like that, as well as protect it from floodings, you know? And we got, of course, the palm tree there. You know, it's just idyllic, isn't it? Dewey.
After Admiral George Dewey's victory at Manila Bay in 1898, Spain was forced to cede the Philippines to the United States.
Right.
Implacably opposed to American occupation of the Philippines was General Emilio Aguinaldo, who for 2 years up to 1901 was the leader of revolt against U.S. government in the islands.
This is funny because Aguinaldo left for Hong Kong. This is really a funny part with Aguinaldo now, because he also fought against the Spaniards. Now, and then he left for exile in Hong Kong. But the Americans, General Dewey, actually brought back Aguinaldo to the Philippines to fight against the Spaniards. But then later on, he fought against the Americans in the Filipino-American War. Now, so it's like they brought him back to help, but then again, they didn't give him the freedom that basically Aguinaldo wanted for the Philippines, right? Basically, America said, well, we are here already, we took it over, we bought it from Spain, we might as well keep the Philippines. And of course, Aguinaldo and the others didn't like that, so here goes the American-Filipino War.
In 1901, was the leader of revolt against U.S. government in the islands, and who never became reconciled to the presence of American troops. But as the benevolence of U.S. rule...
Where is this? I see the insignia there of the City of Manila, American flags, of course. What statues are those, and where is this? If anybody has any idea, can you please leave me a comment below, because I would like to go and see those statues. They look a little bit similar to the Mata Filipinas, but these are ladies standing up, so I have no idea where they are. Where is this?
But as the benevolence of U.S. rule won recognition, and American ideas of democracy were introduced into the Philippines, an orderly and peaceful campaign for self-government began.
Some kind of a parade, huh? That's Congress.
The staunchest champion of the Philippine independence movement for over a quarter of a century was the late Manuel Luis Quezon.
Right. Actually, Manuel Quezon died during the Second World War in the States. And when he died, he was buried at Arlington Cemetery, which is just beside the Pentagon. It's in Washington, D.C. And then later, after the war, he was transferred back to the Philippines.
Who by 1934 had secured from the U.S. a Commonwealth status for the Philippines and the promise of complete freedom by 1946.
Right.
For his services in the struggle for independence, grateful Filipinos in 1935 elected Manuel Quezon as first president of their new Commonwealth.
Oh, there's so many people. Oh, no, I see Tramvia there going down the street, and I see the boulevard just being absolutely impeccable, beautiful. Wow, look at all those big trees we see here.
Time President Quezon assumed office, the Philippines, under U.S. rule, had
Jones
achieved a
Bridge.
degree of progress and prosperity unmatched among any of the dependent peoples of the Far East.
There's Pasig River here. And the old building you see there, it actually still stands in Binondo, huh?
But this prosperity was not widely distributed, and the living standard of the masses of Filipinos was high only in comparison with the rest of the Orient.
Okay.
Mainstay of Philippine economy was agriculture, with rice as the one big food crop.
Rice planting again, huh?
The island's farms were largely held by big landowners,
Right.
of whom millions of poorly paid Filipinos worked in lifelong peonage. Few of these were able to acquire land of their own.
That's
so
true.
3/4 of the island's arable soil lay idle.
Oh my goodness, really? 3/4 were not even being used to grow anything? Wow, that was not good. So, of course, we needed the agrarian reforms that came later on, and well, it's still a work in progress until today, isn't it?
Of the few exportable crops on which Philippine prosperity depended, most important was cane sugar,
Sugar
of
cane.
which the Philippines produced over 1 million tons a year,
Wow, that's a lot.
exporting almost 2/3 of it to the United States.
Wow, talaga? Grabe. That's a lot, huh?
Another major source of income in the islands was the growing of abaca
Mm,
and its processing into Manila hemp.
right.
A strong fiber found only in the Philippines, hemp is converted into a rope of outstanding quality in demand throughout the world.
Basically, that's the rope that they used on the ships before, huh? I don't know if they still actually use Manila rope, but if you guys know, leave me a comment below. Oh, it's a hard worker, huh? That's a lot of rope.
Included among the island's great mineral resources, of still undetermined extent, are immense deposits of chromite, found
Chromite?
less than 20 years ago,
Oh,
and
really?
huge veins of gold discovered on the island of Luzon.
Right. But
The richest in the world, these mines are capable of producing as much as 1 million fine ounces of gold each year.
that's a lot of gold. Well, I know we have a lot of natural resources in the Philippines. I think we're just only missing diamonds. I think that's the only thing we don't really have. But that's a lot of gold we're producing here in the Philippines. Grabe. As I said in my videos before, the Philippines is really a very, very rich country. It is just that the wealth is distributed wrongly.
But all these industries brought benefits chiefly to a few shrewd investors who formed a small ownership class.
Okay.
Between this group and the great masses of Philippine people, there existed almost no middle class.
That's true, no?
In pre-war times, foreigners controlled many of the biggest Philippine industries,
Correct.
and the economy of the islands, based almost entirely upon trade with the U.S., depended chiefly upon tariff concessions which gave Philippine products a favored position in American markets.
So, of course, here we're looking at it from the American perspective, and it was very different during the Spanish times, and even before the Spanish times. It was a completely different story.
During the 4 decades of American rule, more money was spent on public health and education than on any other function of government.
Oh, that's good. That's nice to hear.
And almost universal illiteracy was greatly reduced through
Right.
the establishment in every village and town of at least one primary school, with
Yes.
much of the teaching modeled after U.S. methods of progressive education.
The Americans sent a lot of teachers to the Philippines to educate the Filipinos. during the time of the colonization by America?
To send a son or a daughter to the University of the Philippines, Filipinos were willing to make tremendous sacrifices. For the ambition of most families was to have at least one girl or boy graduate into some respected business.
That's
or
nice.
profession.
That's good.
Until Philippine independence would finally take effect, defense of the islands rested upon the U.S. fleet units based
Right.
at Cavite in Manila Bay.
Wow, so the American Navy was based in Cavite, while we still had other bases up in Olongapo, diba, and Angeles City, no?
And upon the U.S. Air Forces assembled and maintained in the Philippines. But Filipinos knew that from the day their freedom became an accomplished fact, the responsibility for national defense might well be theirs.
Of course. That's quite normal, I think.
General Douglas MacArthur, who with Major Dwight Eisenhower as his assistant commanded American forces in the Philippines, was the man President Quezon chose to head the new Philippine military establishment.
MacArthur was the commander-in-chief of the Philippine Army, and his assistant was Dwight Eisenhower? Did I get that right? And MacArthur's father, Arthur MacArthur, was a governor general in the Philippines before the war. Wow. Wow. So many famous people were here, huh?
MacArthur set out on a program by which he hoped, within 10 years, to have a trained army of 300,000, capable of holding off any threatened invasion.
300,000 soldiers, huh? Okay. Well, there was not that many people at that time, so makes sense.
Before
Kamtao.
MacArthur's military program was half completed, war struck the Philippines.
Oh.
Within 5 months, Japan overwhelmed the few thousand ill-equipped American and Filipino troops defending the island.
Yes.
And in place of the Americans, who had governed with justice and who promised freedom, came the Japanese, who governed by the sword and offered nothing but slavery.
Well, it must have been a horrible time during the occupation, huh?
Of all the dependent peoples of Asia, the common people of the Philippines alone united to resist the conqueror. All over the islands, behind Japanese lines, guerrilla armies sprang up.
Yeah, that's true.
Filipinos of many races, religions, and dialects forgot their differences.
Oh, that's good.
With whatever weapons were at hand,
Right.
plus what could be smuggled in, the Filipino guerrillas fought the Japanese for 3 hard years.
Signal center.
Many American Army officers who had avoided capture were among their leaders.
Oh,
Through the
really?
years, the Filipino guerrillas funneled military information which proved invaluable to U.S. operations in the Pacific.
Ayan. MacArthur invades the Philippines, 1944. Is it there? It is. The landing in Leyte.
With the triumphant return of MacArthur, backed by powerful armies and an immense supply organization, the U.S. put to
Nice.
full use the fighting effectiveness of the island's guerrillas.
Didn't he once say that, give me 10,000 Filipino soldiers and I will conquer the world?
Outfitted with American weapons and equipment, they joined forces with MacArthur's men in the final hard-fought campaign to wipe out the Japanese.
Right. Oh my goodness. Ah, yeah.
Within 9 months of the first landing on Leyte, U.S. forces had virtually completed the liberation of the island. Everywhere,
that was
the Americans
fast.
were greeted as saviors by a grateful people.
Nice.
To the Filipinos, this was the vindication of their faith in the United States
Yeah.
and in their hero, General Douglas MacArthur.
Of course they were happy.
After 3 long years of
Yes.
slavery, the Philippine people could once again live in freedom. And to their American allies, beside whom they had fought so valiantly, they looked hopefully for aid in peace as they had in war.
With the land freed of the Japanese, the Philippine people began to rebuild their ruined country in preparation for independence. Oh my god, look at how the city was destroyed, huh? Everything basically here in the Quiapo and Binondo side was destroyed. On the other side, it was destroyed as well. You got the old post office burned out basically, no? I can still see a lot of other buildings that we know, like the Metropolitan Theater. Oh my god. Well, actually, the city of Manila was the second most destroyed city right after the Second World War. The first one was, of course, Warsaw in Poland.
As they faced the gigantic task of rehabilitation, the Filipinos had ample need of the stoicism and courage they had shown under occupation. With supplies drastically depleted, food allowances had to be restricted to the barest minimum.
So, of course, right after the Second World War, food was in short supply in almost every country, including the Philippines. So it must have been very, very hard to actually live a proper life right after the Second World War. Kahit dito sa Philippines, no?
And the hunt for enough nourishment to keep alive became an endless preoccupation of city dwellers. To start the monumental task of reconstruction, as well as to create employment, the Philippine government set out, with the help of the U.S. Army, to enroll available workers in a temporary labor pool.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Thousands of men signed up for an intensive course of training in American Army engineering methods.
Oh, really?
They were employed all over the islands, clearing the debris of war to make way for the establishment of peace.
Wow, that must have been such a big task to clean up after the city has been destroyed. Not just Manila, but so many cities in the Philippines were destroyed, right? It must have been an immense task. And it was the same all over Europe, of course. After the Second World War, cities all over were destroyed. We were lucky in Denmark. Almost nothing was damaged. You know, it was so little. But I can imagine in Germany and England, of course, and all the other cities of Europe, they must have had such a hard time. And I still remember way back in the 70s when we went to Germany, we could still see ruins lying around in German cities. Can you imagine that 30 years after the war? That's incredible. What a huge task to rebuild a city, huh? A country.
Harbor, laborious salvage operations were begun
Okay.
to recover for the Philippine government $8.5 million worth of coins.
Oh, really?
All the silver in the island's pre-war treasury, which had been dumped into the bay early in the war to prevent its falling into Japanese hands.
Wow, that's a lot of money just lying at the bottom of Manila Bay, huh? I wonder if they got all of it out, or is there still any there? Maybe you should go diving in Manila Bay. Anyhow, it's almost gonna be swimmable again in Manila Bay. That's what they're saying with the cleanup of Manila Bay, right? So who wants to come swimming and look for some silver coins in Manila Bay?
For months, Army and Navy divers worked in 20 fathoms of water to reclaim the treasure, which had lain there since before the fall of Corregidor.
God, look at that, huh? It's an old diver suit. Oh, they got a lot, huh? I wonder if they got all of it.
First step in reorganizing the financial life of the islands was to restore banking facilities
Okay.
and make possible the ordinary business transactions of peacetime.
Yes, of course.
For until Philippine commerce and industry could be re-established, there would be no adequate source of tax revenues with which to finance rehabilitation.
That's true. If nothing is working, you know, how can you get any taxes, right? How can you get a country to work? So they need to restore the country as fast as possible.
The need for money and construction materials was immediate and urgent. And for these, there was only one place to turn, the United
Where?
States.
Ah, okay.
Recognizing this fact, the U.S. sent to Manila a mission headed by Senator Millard E. Tidings to determine the extent of the assistance the Philippines would need. On the recommendation of the Tidings report, the U.S. in 1946 granted President Sergio Osmeño's government over $500 million for
Wow.
reconstruction.
That's a lot of money. So they got a grant of $500 million? That was a lot of money at that time, huh?
Plus special tariff and trade privileges to last for 28 years.
Whoa, nice.
Though the path ahead is still a thorny one, the people of the Philippines have at least gained from the war a new regard for democracy.
That's true.
And are today politically alive and active. Proud of the part they played in liberation, newly conscious of their collective power, the ordinary people of the islands are demanding a bigger stake in the future of the country for which they fought.
Of course.
Voting for a president to lead their infant republic through its first 4 critical years of independence, the Philippine people chose Manuel Acuña Rojas, long the leader of the Insular Senate. A skilled and experienced politician, Manuel Rojas is an able economist as well. With freedom at last, and with the sorely needed financial...
Look at how everything is destroyed. This is actually Jones Bridge. Look at how it was destroyed. Can you see that? You see basically nothing was left of it. Gabe. Wow, that's horrible, huh?
And economic assistance of the U.S. already theirs. The 18 million citizens of the Philippines are today setting out on the high road of independence. Aware as never before of their national identity, they are determined to make for themselves a respected place in the family of free and independent nations.
So this was right after the war, but you can still see the determination of the people to reconstruct and rebuild the country, which they did. And amazingly got a grant of $500 million from America. That was a huge amount of money, you know, during those times. But you also did a lot of good. You reconstructed the country, you made it great again. It became the second richest country in Asia right after the Second World War. I hope you enjoyed seeing what the Philippines was like right after the Second World War, probably with your grandparents or your parents who were alive during those times. They might even have pictures or stories to tell you from right after the Second World War. Now that would be so interesting to hear. So if ever you guys have any great stories, just tell me here in the comments. I will definitely read them. And as always, if you like my videos, please remember to give it a big thumbs up. And don't forget to ring that bell button so you can be notified whenever I have new videos for you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to click that subscribe button and of course the bell button so you'll be notified when we have new videos for you.